My name is Jessica, and when I was 20 years old, my parents looked me in the eye and said the words that still echo in my head. We won't pay for your college tuition. You don't deserve it. They said it as casually as someone commenting on the weather, like it wasn't about my future, my dreams, or years of hard work. The sting of it wasn't just the words. It was the fact that they were paying in full for my twin sister Camille, who had gotten into the exact same program at the exact same time, but I didn't let their rejection end me. I refused to fold. I went anyway. 2 years later, the very same people who had dismissed me as if I were disposable would show up at my door, pale and tight-lipped, faces drained of all color when they found out the truth. If you've ever been betrayed by the very people who were supposed to be your biggest supporters, you'll understand the burn I carried. When the acceptance email first came in, I remember screaming so loud I scared the dog, who bolted out of the room. My hands were shaking uncontrollably as I clicked it open, even though the subject line already gave it away. Congratulations. You've been accepted. It didn't matter. I had to see the words inside with my own eyes. I got in. I ran down the hallway like a lunatic, nearly wiping out on the rug before bursting into the kitchen where my parents were sipping coffee. Camille was already at the table, chin bent over her phone, scrolling like she'd been waiting for something. I got in. I blurted out, breathless, my face aching from how hard I was smiling. Westbrook, the data science program? For 1 second, there was silence. Then my mom blinked, lifted her mug, and said, "Oh, that's great," in the flattest voice you can imagine. She didn't even stand up. Then Camille's phone chimed with a perfectly timed ding. She looked up, her lips curled into a smug little smile. "Me too," she announced. "I just got the email." The air in the kitchen shifted immediately. My mom practically leapt to her feet like someone had set her chair on fire. "You did? Oh my God, Camille, that's amazing," she gushed, rushing to hug her. "Westbrook is lucky to have you." Dad stood next, giving Camille a proud pat on the shoulder like she'd just carried the family name to Olympic gold. Their faces glowed with pride, and me? I was still standing there, holding my phone with the acceptance letter on the screen. I hadn't put it down, but no one moved toward me. No one hugged me. No one even asked to see the letter. "We both got in," I said quietly, my voice coming out smaller than I intended. "Of course," Dad replied with a dismissive glance. "But Camille's always been the more natural fit for that program." The words hit like a slap. I frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" He waved it off as though it were nothing. "Just that Camille's always been more focused. Camille, who had forgotten she registered for the SAT twice. Camille, who had only managed to pass calculus because I spent endless nights tutoring her. I felt like the floor had tilted under me, but that wasn't even the worst of it. That night, after dinner, I brought it up again. I wanted to talk logistics, tuition, housing, next steps. Camille had already plastered her acceptance across every social platform with 30 hashtags and filters, soaking up congratulations like a queen. Meanwhile, I just wanted to figure out how this was going to work. But when I asked, Mom let out a long, weary sigh, the kind you give when someone's nagging you. "Jessica, we need to be honest with you. We're not going to pay your tuition." I blinked, stunned. "What?" Dad didn't even bother looking up from his laptop. "We've decided to use the college fund for Camille." For a moment, I actually thought they were joking. "What do you mean for Camille?" "The fund was for both of us. We're twins. It's supposed to be shared." "It's not that simple," Mom said in that clipped tone she used whenever she was about to twist the knife. "Camille has always been more consistent academically. She's shown real dedication, and I haven't?" My voice cracked. Mom smiled that pitying smile that wasn't a smile at all. "You've always been creative." In our house, creative was code for unreliable, unpredictable, not worth betting on. "College is a huge investment," she added. "We can't afford to take risks." It felt like being slapped while they were still smiling at me. They weren't just choosing Camille. They were telling me directly that I wasn't worth investing in. "I earned this too," I said, fighting the tightness in my throat. "We got into the same program, the same school. I worked just as hard as she did." "You don't deserve it," Dad said flatly, cutting me down in one stroke. "Not the way she does, and that was that." The verdict was in. Camille was Westbrook bound, fully funded. I was on my own. Camille didn't say a word. Not that night, not the next day. She didn't defend me. She didn't even look at me. She just scrolled on her phone, silent and complicit. That night, I locked myself in my room and stared at the acceptance letter until the words blurred. I didn't cry, though I wanted to. Crying felt like it would confirm everything they believed about me, that I was weak, fragile, undeserving. Instead, I opened a blank document on my ancient laptop and began researching scholarships, grants, loans, anything. If my parents thought their rejection would break me, they didn't know me at all. 2 years later, they would be standing at my door, their faces drained of all color. When I first moved into Aunt Mel's cramped apartment, I had nothing but 2 duffel bags, an overheating laptop that crashed if I opened more than 3 tabs, and a knot of bitterness in my chest. My parents hadn't helped me pack. They hadn't even said goodbye. They were too busy chauffeuring Camille to her brand new dorm, taking smiling photos for Facebook like she was royalty heading off to her coronation. I got one text from Mom that day. Good luck. Make smart choices. That was it. Aunt Mel, on the other hand, met me at the bus station with open arms and a grocery bag filled with snacks. You can crash on the pullout, she said cheerfully. It's lumpy, but it's yours. That first night, I lay on the creaky sofa bed, listening to the smell of curry from her neighbor's cooking seep through the walls, and thought, they really meant it. They're really not going to help me at all. But it wasn't the first time I'd been reminded who mattered more. Camille and I might share a birthday, but we were never treated like equals, born 43 minutes apart, yet somehow always 43 steps behind. She got the Barbie dream house. I got socks. She got private tutors and dance lessons. I got told, you're more independent. You don't need all that. She got a sweet 16 with a DJ and catering. I got a cupcake at the kitchen table. So it shouldn't have surprised me that when it came time for college, they made their choice loud and clear. Camille was the investment. I was the gamble they weren't willing to take. I went anyway. And 2 years later, everything had changed. Enough that my parents would be forced to show up at my doorstep, pale and shaken, finally realizing the truth. When the knock came that Wednesday night, I wasn't expecting anyone. I had just finished a late call with a client and was microwaving leftover stir-fry when I heard it. I opened the door and froze. There they were, my parents. Mom in her tailored coat, Dad stiff and uncomfortable beside her, both of them looking like they hadn't planned this, like they weren't sure what to say now that they were here. For a long moment, none of us spoke. Finally, Mom's voice broke the silence. Tight-strained. Jessica, we need to talk. It's about Camille. My stomach dropped. They hadn't come to apologize. They hadn't come because they'd finally recognized what I'd achieved. They'd come because something had gone wrong. And somehow, I already knew they were about to ask me for something I wasn't sure I could give. I didn't invite them in right away. I just stood there in the doorway of my tiny apartment, heart pounding, staring at my parents like they were ghosts. I hadn't seen them in almost 2 years. Not a single visit, not a phone call, not even a birthday text. And now here they were, pale and awkward in my hallway like strangers. Mom broke the silence first. It's Camille, she said. We haven't heard from her in over a week. I blinked. Okay. She hasn't answered texts or calls, Dad added. Her roommate says she's barely been home. We tried checking the university, but the school won't give us anything. You're the only one who might know something. I took a step back and crossed my arms. Why would I know anything? We haven't spoken since freshman year. Mom flinched. Still, you go to the same school. You must have some idea. She's not in any of my classes, I said flatly. We don't exactly run in the same circles. They glanced at each other, unsure. But I could tell that wasn't the full reason they'd come. What's this really about? I asked. That's when Dad reached into his coat and pulled out a folded letter. He handed it to me. Final notice past due balance. Lease property 51Cs, Glendale Avenue, Unit 4B. Outstanding balance $4,732. Immediate payment required to avoid legal action. My eyes scanned the words twice, then again. I don't understand. She stopped paying rent, Mom said quietly. 3 months ago. My jaw tightened. I thought you were covering her rent. We were, Dad said defensive. We sent her money every month directly. You assumed she was paying. I finished for him. Mom's face was red. Now apparently she used it for other things. Travel, clothes, a ski trip, I think. Of course she did. Of course. Camille took their money and used it to live like she was still the golden child in some high school fairy tale. And they'd never noticed, never questioned it. Just kept wiring her money like a broken vending machine, spitting out snacks, whether you push the button or not. She was always hanging out with those wealthy kids, mommered, more to herself than Tommy. I guess she was trying to keep up. I stared at them. So now what? You think I know where she is? You might, Dad snapped. Or maybe you've heard something. I haven't, I said. We haven't spoken in a year. I'm not her babysitter. You could still help, Mom said. She's your sister. I laughed. Not out of humor. It just sort of escaped me. Bitter, dry sister? You mean the one you chose over me? The one you paid for while I worked 3 jobs and slept on a couch for 2 years. That's not fair, Dad said sharply. No, I snapped. It's not, but it's true. Mom softened her voice. We're not asking you to cover Harrent. Just help us find her. She might respond to you. She won't, I said. And even if she did, that's not my problem. There it was. The thing I hadn't dared to say for years. Not when I was 18 and sobbing in Aunt Mill's guest bathroom. Not when I was up at 3 a.m., proofreading data entries with blistered fingers and a migraine. It's not my problem. You've made your choices, I said. So did Camille, and I made mine. Dad stepped forward. Jessica, we are your family. I stepped back. You stopped being mine the day you told me I didn't deserve the education you gave her for free. They both flinched at that. Ataract hit. For a second, nobody said anything. The wind hissed through the hallway outside. My leftover rice steamed gently in the microwave behind me. Then Mom's expression hardened. You've changed. Yes, I said I had to. Dad's jaw tightened. This isn't about the past. Your sister is in trouble. I folded the notice and handed it back. She can deal with it just like I did. You're being selfish, Mom hissed. No, I sighed, I'm finally being fair to myself. They didn't know what to say to that. For so long, I had twisted myself into knots, trying to earn their approval. I had downplayed my hurt, buried my anger, stayed small. Now they wanted something from me, and couldn't hide their disappointment that I wasn't the obedient daughter they remembered. You know, Dad said coldly, for someone who likes to talk about being abandoned, you're doing a good job of abandoning your own family. I didn't flinch. You're not my responsibility. Mom looked like she might cry. We didn't come here to fight. We just thought you thought I'd bail you out, I said. But I'm not your backup plan. I held the door open. Good luck finding Camille. They hesitated, Dad's mouth opening and closing like Hestel had something left to say. But whatever it was, he swallowed it. They left. But it was far from over. I didn't expect to see them again. Not after the way they walked out of my apartment. Not after I refused to clean up the mess Camille made. I figured I was done playing the villain in their story. But, months later, I was invited to speak at a youth entrepreneurship panel. Nothing huge, just a conference for students and early-stage founders. I almost turned it down. Public speaking still made me nervous, but my mentor insisted. What I didn't know was that Asmall Business Magazine had run a profile on me the week before. They'd heard about my company through one of my clients and wanted to do a piece on under 30 founders defying the odds. It had my name, a photo, a quote about how I built something out of nothing. And it landed on my parents' Facebook feed. So there I was, standing backstage in a blazer that cost more than my entire freshman wardrobe when I glanced out into the crowd and saw them third row, sitting together, stone-faced, like they'd wandered in by accident. I felt sick. I nearly walked out, but I didn't. I gave the speech, not because I owed it to anyone, but because I owed it to myself. I talked about struggle, yes, about late nights and couch surfing and jobs that barely covered textbooks. But I also talked about what came after, not the money, the agency. The fact that E got to decide who I was now. That was what mattered. When it ended, I escaped into the hallway to breathe. I'd barely made it 2 steps before I heard my mother's voice. Jessica. I turned slowly. They were both there, my mom holding her bag like a shield. My dad with that tight ed practice smile that meant he wanted something. That was Avery impressive presentation, he said. I said nothing. We saw the article Mo matted. It surprised us. Clearly, I said. She hesitated. Camille's not doing well. That got my attention. She's fallen behind in her program, Mom continued. Failed a few courses. And now she's saying she wants to switch majors entirely, which means starting over. She's also behind on rent. Dad added. You were right. She wasn't using the money we sent for housing. She's been living well beyond her means. I kept my face neutral. I'd warned them. They didn't want to hear it. Then we took out another loan to cover the gap, Mom said quietly. But things are tight now. We're behind on the mortgage. We never imagined things would go this way. And I asked. They exchanged a look. We're asking for help, Dad said finally. Just until things stabilize. It blinked. You're serious. You're doing well now, my mother said. And we're not asking for much. Just enough to cover Camille's tuition going forward and maybe help with the house until we figure things out. I actually laughed. I didn't mean to. It just came out. You're asking me, I said, to pay for the degree you wouldn't let me pursue. For the daughter you chose over me. That's not fair, Dad snapped. We did what we thought was right. No, I said, my voice steady. You did what was easy. You picked the one who smiled at the dinner table and wore the clothes you liked and made you feel good about yourselves. And now that she's not who you thought she'd be, you come crawling back to the one you cast out. Mom's expression flickered. Hurt maybe, but not enough. We're your parents, she said quietly. We're your family. No, I said. You were Camille's family. I was just there. Dad's tone sharpened. You think you're better than us now because you made some money? No, I said again. You think I finally see things clearly. They left not long after that. There was no big argument, no slammed doors, just a quiet, defeated retreat, and I let them go. A week later, I found out they'd started telling people I was ungrateful, that I'd turned on the family and refused to help when they needed it most. Someone even forwarded me a Facebook post my mother had written, vague, but pointed about certain children who forget where they came from. I didn't respond, not publicly, not at first. But then the article got reprinted, a bigger publication. This time it included Aileen from my speech, the one about building without a safety net. And people started messaging me, not trolls, strangers, kids who said they saw themselves in me, kids with estranged families, people trying to build something from nothing. So I told Mystery. Not as a clapback, not to get even, just to tell the truth. I wrote a short post, shared one photo, me in my cap and gown, standing alone outside the university building where I never walked a graduation stage. I was accepted into top program alongside my twin sister. My parents paid for her tuition in full, told me I didn't deserve mine. I worked 3 jobs, crashed on a relative's couch, and eventually dropped out to build a business from scratch. It wasn't revenge, it was survival. And now that I'm standing, I'm building ladders for others, not bridges for those who watch me drown. It went viral, and just like that, the narrative shifted. Not long after, I donated part of my earnings to a scholarship fund, one specifically for first-gen students, or those cut off from family support. I didn't name it after myself. I didn't need to. A few weeks later, I heard from a distant cousin. Your parents lost the house, she texted. Camille moved in with a friend. She's working retail. Not talking to them much anymore. I stared at the message for a long time and then I turned off my phone. I never finished college. Neither did Camille. But there's a difference. She dropped out because she couldn't keep up. I dropped out because I'd already outrun the life they told me I didn't deserve, and I never looked back. Sometimes I still wonder, did I do the right thing? Was I justified in walking away completely? Or did I go too far? Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm genuinely curious how others see it. And if this story resonated with you even a little, don't forget to subscribe for